So Tuesday comes with its fair share of challenges and demands, but we attack it with the strength of gods, just because the universe will not demand from us what we cannot give it. Good morning and welcome to the Morning Brief on Channels Television. I am Bukola Koka, and you know I never do this alone. Kayode and Jeffrey are here. Hello, guys. Good morning.
Hello,
Present.
Exactly. Just took it out of my mouth. While she was talking, what came to my mind was my primary school teachers.
Okay.
Yeah. Just reminds me of primary school teachers, how they have this routine they always do, maybe at the assembly or in class and all of that. So we're like students to Bukola right now. Whenever we come, we're like, okay, what quote is she going to come with today?
Teacher, what do you have
as
for
our
us
class teacher? The only good thing is that, funny thing crossed my mind. I don't know what I should say to
Hey, Jeffrey, you know, you and I have something in common, and you always come with your daily motivation that I look forward to, as a matter of fact, and I draw strength from. So I'm waiting for yours.
It depends on where I went to buy stuff. Good morning, welcome to the Morning Brief. I'm Jeffrey Uzoma.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're live for you in Lagos, Nigeria's commercial capital. It's the International Day of Tea, by the way. So grab your cup of tea. Join us right here on your favorite breakfast show, The Morning Brief. I'm Kayode Okikiolu.
The British show said, cup of tea.
International Day of Tea. Yeah. And we have quite some to celebrate.
Let's be a cup of tea this morning.
We have tea
we should have our own local tea.
Taraba State. We have our own local tea. And we have Zobo tea as well. Yeah. So the question is how we're deploying these resources to increase domestic production and, of course, production for exportation as well.
You can actually make your own tea. Find your favorite leaf, dry it, crunch it, put it in a little tea bag, tie it up, and just dip it. Tea is actually, I know tea has been made to look like it's exclusive. Some of us don't like tea.
I'm not a tea guy,
because
so that's why I'm quiet.
Exactly, because
I'm
it's
a water
hot,
guy.
And then we're in a temperate region. The weather is quite hot here, so you're wondering, why am I taking tea, something hot, when the weather is hot? And that's a conversation for another day, how we sort of borrow some things that are not really practical.
Maybe early hours of the morning may do, because,
your temperature in the morning, some people's hot temperature, really, the cold temperature that you are saying, oh, it's cold. It's some people's hot weather, right? And that's why they take tea, because it helps to warm the body. But it's really hot here, so people have advocated for cold tea. Why don't you take something that works with your weather? But whatever the case is, it's International Day of the Tea.
Yes, indeed. And so, the tea tradition in Nigeria, I don't know about other parts of Africa, is quite different, from what you have in the West, where you have your tea cup on the saucer, very small tea cup, with your, small spoon, and then you stir, and then you drop the spoon just by the small teacup, and then you pick up your teacup and you sip just a little and a little. But the tea tradition in Nigeria, in my own home, you have to have that very big cup, and then your spoon.
It's a bowl.
Very big cup, very, very, very big teacup. Yes, the
literally.
mug. Yes, that's
a mug
that can take you, 3 rounds of breakfast, and then you must have your teaspoon, big teaspoon, by the way, inside the teacup, and then. You can sip with your teaspoon inside your cup. It's not bad manners.
You see, that's
the tea tradition in Nigeria.
I like the fact that
in my own home.
even though we adopt some of these things, we have our own way of doing it.
Yeah.
So that's the way Bukola explains it is the way we do our own. We're the only ones, perhaps, who take tea and then use water to wash it down. So that's
you haven't drunk anything yet.
Yeah,
if you don't add water to it.
And then as though you ate a ban,
right, like a proper meal.
And then I learned, is it etiquette school? I don't know who taught us that thing, that when you take a cup of tea, if you're full, maybe you go for an event, one of these exclusive events, one of the ways you tell the person who is serving, whoever is serving, that, okay, I've just had about enough, is maybe you turn your cup of tea, when you're done, turn it upside down, cover it, really? All of that. Because as long as you finish it and drop it, the idea is that keep it coming.
All right.
And before you know, you've finished a GP tank.
That's the real African tea tradition.
Yeah.
I don't understand the concept of having a very small teacup, and before you know it, you're done with that portion of tea.
Because
I don't understand
it. I think we major on quantity. Look, as an African man, you got to load this thing up. We have a long journey in this country.
Okay, so whatever your tea tradition is, if you are taking tea this morning, or it's ogi, or it's cocoa, or it's what else?
Because you're the one that started it. Finish it.
Or pudding.
I'm not a tea guy, so
Join us on the morning brief. It's going to be an exciting and stimulating 1 hour plus, 1 hour 30 to 40 minutes. So what do we have for you today? From the days of the Nigeria Dams Authority, NDA, and the Electricity Corporation of Nigeria in the 1950s to the privatization of the Power Holding Company of Nigeria in 2013, successive administrations have failed to transform the country's power sector. Despite billions of dollars invested, still we'll continue with our assessment of the current administration's strides in that sector against the backdrop of what it promised.
And that's all. Remember that yesterday we had a huge conversation, and of course this conversation we will continue at some point on that particular conversation. I'm just going to not let the cat out of the bag, as I say.
Yeah.
But something happened yesterday in the nation's capital at the legislature where judicial officers were in focus, and part of the conversation of that day was the fact that their salaries have been stagnated for over 15, I think about 17 years. So what exactly does that mean for judicial officers, especially judges and all of that and the entire spectrum? We'll explore that conversation because reactions are coming through as far as that sector, which is one of the greatest pillars of democracy, is concerned.
Well, Labour is not the only one calling for increased wages or welfare, but that's not all. We bring to you on the substance side of things what it takes to actually win one of the most coveted awards for television and film on the continent. We'll find out from one of your favorite blockbuster actors. You love to see him on the screen interpreting stories, but guess what? We bring you his story. Ademola Adedoyin from The Breath of Life joins us on the show today.
Exactly.
And that's not all. What would this show be without your own contribution? You are the fourth guest on the show, or the fourth presenter if you like it. So start talking to us already on all our social media platforms, particularly your favorite, X. Post at us on some of the big talking points. Would it be what the judiciary should be earning, judiciary workers should be earning? Would it be any other big story that will be coming your way shortly? Start talking to us. Start typing on all our social media platforms. Don't forget #CTV Morning Brief. And if you're not following us already, start following us. Of course, we'll be taking some of your thoughts right after this time out and through the course of the program. It promises to be exciting, as we say. Join us after this break for the top stories. We'll be right back. Welcome back, and top on the brief this morning, the judiciary takes center stage in the nation's capital with critical decisions and concerns raised by its leadership. We begin from the courts in Abuja, where the Federal High Court Abuja on Monday dismissed the request of the detained leader of the indigenous people of Biafra, Nnamdi Kanu, for bail or to be moved from the Department of State Security Service custody to a prison, or should be placed under house arrest. The trial judge, Justice Binta Nyako, said the same request had been brought before her by the defendant and it was dismissed for lack of merit.
I can never be tried in any court of law in Nigeria. That's what the law says. Anybody standing in trial or coming to try me is a terrorist. That's what their law says. As simple as not me. As simple as that. Section 2, subsection 3F of Terrorism Prevention and Prohibition Act. That's what it says. Any court considered to try me is committed an act of terrorism. Yes. Very clear. You cannot violate a treaty that Nigeria entered into and then come to try that very person is not done anywhere in the world. So you must be aware of that. So that is why there is all these ridiculous delays. That is what Supreme Court said. I did not jump bail. My home was invaded. They came to kill me and I survived. They came to Kenya to kidnap me, brought me back to this country and seeking to try me, which the law says cannot happen. You cannot violate a treaty that Nigeria entered into and then hope to stand on that illegality to conduct a trial. Is not done anywhere in the world. And it happened in my case. Nobody has, there's no exception. No exception whatsoever. That's what the law says. Section 12 of the Constitution, what does it say? Any treaty ratified by Nigeria becomes law. It's law. You cannot change it. It doesn't matter what they do. All these shenanigans is just pure rubbish. You never stand. Not with me.
IPOB leader there, Nnamdi Kanu. In the meantime, Justice Inyang Ekwo of the Federal High Court Abuja has dismissed a request by alleged terrorist negotiator Mohammed Tukur Mamu seeking a transfer from the custody of the Department of State Service, DSS, to the Kuje Correctional Center. Delivering the ruling, Justice Ekwo held that the federal government had raised the issues of incessant jailbreaks in prisons as a major ground to oppose the request for transfer to Kuje. The judge subsequently ordered Mr. Mahmoud to remain in DSS custody throughout his trial in the criminal charges against him. And staying with legal matters, against the backdrop of numerous allegations of misconduct against judicial officers, the Chief Justice of Nigeria, Justice Oluka Odiariwola, is warning that the country's judicial system will no longer tolerate such behavior. He gave this warning at the opening of a two-day workshop for High Court and Appeal Court judges in Abuja. The workshop aims to review the judicial proceedings of various petitions arising from the 2023 general elections. And more on judicial matters. The Attorney General of the Federation and Minister of Justice, Mr. Lateef Fagbemi, has expressed displeasure over what he terms neglect in the remuneration of judicial officers for close to 17 years. According to the minister, this situation is against any meaningful judicial reform. He stated this during a public hearing by the Senate Committee on Judiciary, Human Rights and Legal Matters on the advancement of welfare of the judiciary and the need to salvage the sector. In the meantime, a former chairman of the National Human Rights Commission, Professor Chidi Odinkalu, has lent his voice to the remuneration of workers in the judiciary. Professor Odinkalu believes that any percentage increase in the remuneration for judges without doing same for other judicial workers could hinder the smooth running of the judicial system. He spoke as guest on our political program, Politics Today. And from the judiciary to politics, former President Goodluck Jonathan is calling for an end to the political crisis in Rivers State, warning that the dispute could have significant implications for the entire Niger Delta region. He urged Governor Simlaye Fubara and his predecessor, FCT Minister Nyesom Wike, to reconcile their differences for the benefit of the citizens. The former president was speaking during the flag-off of the Trans-Kalabari Road in Obiakpo local government area.
Outgoing governors and incoming governors must know that they work together for the collective interests of the citizens of the state. And that is critical because you must work together. In this case of Rivers State, Honorable Minister Nyesom Wike and Governor Sim Fubara must work together for developing the land and the people of Rivers State. The tension will not help us. Rivers State is very critical in this country. Rivers State is the heart of the Niger Delta. If Rivers State is destabilized, the whole Niger Delta will be destabilized. Leaders must know that nobody takes 100%. You must learn the principle of give and take. So our own political actors must work together if you love the Rivers people. You must work together if you love the Rivers people. And I join the leaders of Rivers State and the well-meaning Nigerians that have been calling for truce. They have been calling for ceasefire to also re-emphasize that there is a need for ceasefire. Let us do things that will rather project the state. There is this common saying that when two elephants are fighting, the grass suffers. Both the governor and our minister are young people, very young people, but they are powerful. And if they continue to fight, the rivers people will suffer. So whatever has passed has passed. Let's move to a new future for the interest of the state, for the interest of the Niger Delta, and indeed for the interest of this country.
And now to security matters in Borno State, to be precise, where 387 family members of Boko Haram terrorists, comprising men, women and children, have been rescued from Sambisa Forest by forces of Sector 1 Northeast Joint Task Force Operations heading Kai. The troops also recovered several vehicles and equipment seized by the terrorists from the Nigerian army at the peak of the insurgency.
You have done wonderfully well. Everybody is happy with you. They called me from Gambia to tell me they saw what we did. That's Gambia, our troops in Gambia. The Chief of Army Staff is highly pleased. We had to sacrifice whatever it is to come so that you know that we are with you always.
To education now, federal tertiary institutions will soon receive a new lease of life, with plans by the federal government to have a total of 1.2 million students to participate in the pilot phase of the newly introduced student loan scheme. This was made known by the managing director of the Nigeria Education Loan Fund, Mr. Akintunde Sawyer, who explains that the pilot phase will begin on May the 24th. He was addressing a press conference in Abuja where he said that measures have been established to prevent bad loans and potential challenges during implementation.
The student loan scheme will pay 100% of the fees for the loanees at the institution, the approved institution that we grant loans for. What do I mean by that? If the fees are 100,000 for the session, that's what we'll pay. We won't pay 99, we won't pay 98, we'll pay 100% of those fees. Now you can imagine that there are lots and lots of different courses offered across all the various institutions. Those courses are not standard in terms of the institutional fees that each institution charges. One institution charges amount A, another one charges amount B for the same course. So the reality is that we will pay 100% of the institutional fees for the particular institution, for that particular loanee. Having said that, there's also the track of providing stipends to the loanees. So if you think about it like this, we've got to pay institutional fees, which will give the student unfettered access to classes, to examination rooms, to tutorials, to seminars within the confines of the institution. But we will also make a monthly payment to the individual who's studying, because there's a recognition that just paying the fees alone may not be sufficient.
Good news for Nigerian students there. In other stories, the Nigeria Labour Congress, NLC, and the Trade Union Congress, TUC, are asking the federal government to conclude all negotiations regarding the new minimum wage before the end of May the 31st. Both unions have also asked the National Electricity Regulatory Commission to immediately reverse the new minimum wage before the end of May to avert an industrial action. A joint statement signed by the presidents of the two unions criticized the federal government for unduly delaying the negotiations, calling also on their members in states that are being owed the current 30,000 naira minimum wage to gear up for industrial action. And outside our shores, Iran's Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei has been announced. The government of Iran has announced 5 days of mourning following the death of the country's president, Ibrahim Raisi. Mr. Raisi was killed in a helicopter crash in a mountainous area of northwest Iran, along with Foreign Minister Hossein Amir Abdullahian. State media confirmed they were killed after the helicopter they were traveling in came down on Sunday. Ayatollah Khamenei said he offered his condolences to the dear people of Iran. Mr. Raisi was 63 and has been tipped as a potential successor to the supreme leader. And sports news now, the drama continues after the EPL championship has been fought and won as Feyenoord coach Arne Slot was on Monday confirmed as Jurgen Klopp's successor at Liverpool by the Premier League club. Liverpool said in a statement that the Dutchman, 45, would take up the position of head coach on June the 1st, subject to a work permit. The club did not specify the length of his contract in their statement, but reports suggest that Arne Slot had signed a 3-year deal. He confirmed Anfield was his next destination at his official pre-match press conference at the Eredivisie club on Friday. Wow, quite a mouthful there, and that sums it up on the top stories. But we now begin to take some of your thoughts, your reactions to the big stories, and Jeffrey joins me for a review.
Absolutely. So one of the things that caught my attention in the stories you read is the call it statesmanship by the former president Goodluck Jonathan, who is recognized for what he did in the 2015 election, and he's saying, look, nobody has to win this fight. They all have to look for a way to find a middle ground. That's between Nyesom Wike, the FCT minister, and the governor of Rivers State, Siminalayi Fubara. And I think it was a statement from the statesman. And I think they should do the best they can. You can't win everything. You may have to compromise some. That is why in labor terms they call it collective bargaining. So it compromises here and there, and then so that the state can move forward. Because at the end of the day, there's really no victor, no vanquish at the end of the day, because it's about the people primarily. Whoever you are, it is the people that made you. So you must do your best to serve the people. So I think it was a clear statement without taking sides. Look, gentlemen, sheath your swords, do the best you can. It's a difficult time. There's a lot to deal with in governance. Why all this?
And you know, Jeffrey, if this sounds like Oliver Twist, then so be it. We would be requiring the statesmanship of former President Goodluck Jonathan to go beyond the public calls to a private intervention between, you know, the two political warlords, so to speak, as we say in this parlance, you know, to address whatever the issues are. You know, till now, nobody knows exactly what is the cause of this spat between political father and political godson. So that intervention should go behind closed doors such that it can be settled amicably and enduringly.
All right, so the first trend we will, that you've been talking about on X is the United Kingdom Civil Aviation Authority writing to Nigeria's Civil Aviation Authority stating airpeace has reportedly violated some aviation regulations. But let's put context to this. Before we read your trend, let's put it in context. Airpeace has responded to what they saw in the media, and they say it's misleading that some of these issues were resolved. As far back as a month ago, they talk about electronic flight bag that reduces paperwork for crew members. They say it was addressed. The issue of iPad mounts that was complained about, they say they also resolved it. The issue of the location of cockpit library, also they had that conversation. They also resolved it according to them. They also talked about the runway exit after landing for the pilot. They said some of these things have, maybe all of it, perhaps have been resolved about a month ago, so they don't know where all of this is coming from. But let's read your thoughts nonetheless. We needed to put context. These are the people you're talking about. This is their response. That this is as far back, and they raised about 4 or 5 issues which they say has been addressed. Technology statistics says aviation safety is a serious matter. If it's true that airpeace violated some rules, it needs to do something about it as soon as possible. Many of us really want airpeace to succeed in the international aviation market. So I hope that explanation I gave from the airpeace side suffices for all of this.
And you know that the owner of Airpeace Airlines had provided context, you know, to what was happening following the reduction in the price of trips between Lagos and London, you know, on political interview, Politics Today, where he said what's happening really is tantamount to, you know, price war between international airlines and domestic airlines.
It's business.
And because of Airpeace's move, you know, they had begun to experience things like this that he says is tantamount to some sort of persecution, so to speak, in London. So we hope that this is resolved amicably. Well, there's another reaction coming from NS Igugu, who says, why play politics if Airpeace violated some aviation rules? Why not write Airpeace to implement such measures instead of writing Nigeria Aviation Authority? Suspend Airpeace to UK due to competition if Nigeria will not reciprocate the same kind gesture.
Nigeria has to protect our own at the end of the day. Linked NBRS says no Nigerian airports, international or local, meets required safety standards criteria. They won't accept any foreign aircraft landing in our airport. The rot is from home. If FAN takes this seriously, every carrier would have to meet international safety standards to operate.
Well,
Bukola, the next one.
The next one is from Solarisco, who says, Airpeace should respond ASAP. Safety remains priority and cannot be politicized. Prevention is better than cure, I beg.
For the records, Airpeace has responded. They raised 4 to 5 issues, and they say it's been cleared about a month ago or so. Heaven Bound says there are protocols and standards. Airpeace must abide by this. Airpeace must follow international standards and safety.
And lastly, Omoni Olariwaju Michael says they should name the violated aviation safety regulation, and failure to do so, they should keep quiet forever. Well, they've done that already, we believe.
Boy.
That's why they wrote to the Nigeria Civil Aviation Authority.
Okay, so let's get to this next one now. I think it has to do with AGF, NJC, RM, AFC, others backing the proposed 300% salary allowances increases for judges. Let's get straight to it. Tolo says, how do you even explain this 300 increment for judges while the same FG proposed 60% increment for civil servants? Nigerians deserve to know the reason behind this disparity in salary increments.
Well, this next one is from Sequences, who says, and Nigerian civil servants continue with peanuts handed over to them as monthly salary.
Senator Shehu Sani, it says, of the 3 arms of government, Judiciary is the most underpaid. The proposed 300% pay rise for judges is long overdue. The FG and states now have enough resources to address this imbalance. The judiciary staff should also benefit from this increase. Let there be justice to the justices. That was quite a mouthful. I almost messed it up.
And not just justices, as the conversation is now taking shape now to the entire gamut of judiciary workers. Yep. But really, we should be looking critically at what the minimum payment is in that sector, you know, such that there is equity for all category of workers. Right. This next talking point is about the CBN's withdrawal of the cybersecurity levy after Mr. President's intervention. And the first person speaking here is Circuit Sparrow, who says, kudos to CBN for addressing legal concerns and heeding public feedback on the 0.5% levy. Policy making must be adaptive to impute. #cybersecurity.
At underscore, Dean Mizi says, as expected, it makes no sense, no justification thereof. Next, Bukola.
And Abdullahi Bayero says, why was it initiated in the first instance? Haven't they done IA before they even bring it onto the table?
All right, let's go to this particular one that has to do with the application for the students' loan scheme, and applicants from federal institutions can access the loans. Only applicants, according to the federal government, from what we see here. Gibson Oluwatobi says the governor, too, should give out loans for the state institutions. Bukola?
And this next one is from Collins Okpara, who says, what about those in state institutions? Are their education and future less important? This selective policy is a slap in the face to countless hard-working students striving for a better future. Every Nigerian student deserves equal access to financial support, regardless of where they study. This blatant discrimination needs to end now, please.
All right, let's go to the issue of Rivers State and take just a few of your posts here. Jonathan, former President Goodluck Jonathan, calling for a truce, asks Wike and Fubara to work together. King Sazi says, well-spoken, a statesman that knows what politics is about. Sim, that's Governor Sim Fubara, and former Governor Wike will heed the advice and put away whatever it is causing the division. All those that are fanning the ember of confusion should be avoided by both parties. This is a clarion call.
And this is a short one from Inkiru Kama. I hope I got your name correctly. And they say, which one is work together? Wike should step aside for Fubara to work. Well, we'll see how all this plays out. And that sums it up on our review of some of your reactions to the big stories. Of course, we'll be taking some more of them, particularly on our big talking points today, starting with the power sector. So keep it logged here and start typing, because we'll be taking your reactions. And we'll start off with our first talking point after this time out. Stay with us.
The electricity will become more accessible and affordable to businesses and homes alike. Power generation should nearly double, and transmission and distribution network must improve significantly. We will encourage various state governments to continue to participate in this effort, power generation and distribution of their own.
President Bola Tinubu there speaking just about a year ago, making promises, but the promises date all the way back to the campaign period. So today on the show, we're dissecting the what you ordered versus what you got. Electricity sector is the focus this morning. What was promised, what was ordered, what has been delivered or being delivered to Nigeria this morning. We have joining us on the show two gentlemen who will be helping us walk through this very, very tricky subject around power. Right here in our studio, Dr. Ademola Oni, partner, Energy Practice Group, Bloomfield LP, commercial lawyer, energy law and policy. Is also the author of Renewables, Electric Power Transactions and Electricity Act 2023. He's right here with us. And right next to him is engineer Arthur Osiagu, who's a member, Nigerian Society of Engineers, Managing Director and CEO of CCS Technology Limited. Gentlemen, welcome to the Morning Brief.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. You know, this conversation is so important. We had to have you live because we're talking power and it's always meant to be live. We just listened to the president, and it's quite instructive, the things he said. But let's even break it down further and take a look at the promises he made in his Renewed Hope manifesto. So let's start with the generation and transmission targets. That was the very first in the Renewed Hope mandate that the president presented to Nigerians. And this is a promise he made. Over the long term, says we will seek to implement further reforms to put the nation on a track to sufficient on-grid generation, transmission, and distribution to power the bright Nigeria of our dreams. So we're going to start from that leg, gentlemen. But just as a starter, just quick words from you. How would you rate the Tinubu government so far in 1 year? I think that should be a starter before we break it further. I'll begin with you, Dr. Oni.
For me, at best, modest. I think that in terms of results, and that's what people want to see, we haven't done well. We haven't done that well. In terms of efforts, I see a lot of efforts, but no one cares about efforts, right? Everyone cares about the results you see. You may also compare, you may want to do an analogy with building a house. At that point of developing the foundation, you just see a lot of mess.
Right.
It could as well be that. I'm not a part of the government, but I in terms of results, modest at best.
Modest. Engineer Osiagu.
Well, if you look at what he promised, if you go through his manifesto, he did promise 15,000 megawatts in 4 years. This is almost a year. How is the 15 megawatts in process? I'll say no. 15 megawatts is not what you do I know within a year, but the processes leading to it, there should have been some few things we are seeing on the ground, but that is not happening. I know how difficult the power sector is. Yes, there have been quite a lot of movement in terms of policy changes, but it has not actually metamorphosed
so
to show the direction
average
leading to
fail.
Well, I'll say it's still work in progress, but we've not seen something that is that will give us the what we actually give us the idea to say things are beginning to pan up.
You know, they say the taste of the pudding is in the eating. Maybe now they say the taste of the power. I don't touch it though, because it will shock you. The president made categorical statements saying more accessible and affordable power to businesses and homes. So, Dr. Oni, is it that it will get worse before it gets better because it is not more accessible? Neither is it more affordable. If anything, it is more expensive now, even though some of the discos have reduced their cost, but it's really marginal. So is it that it will get worse before it gets better?
Okay, so there's always that debate around accessibility and affordability. For areas where you want to access investments, you want a lot of people to throw in risk capital, it's accessibility first before affordability, because it's market forces of demand and supply. It's the more you have, the cheaper it becomes. And power is thrives on economics of scale. That's why when you see estates that have IPPs, they're more expensive. In my estate, I think it's over 300 naira, 316 recently, based on gas pricing also. So accessibility, it would not necessarily be affordable in the short term. But in the long term, if policies work the way they should be, if government walks the talk, then it should improve. You start with band A, you have rules where everybody needs to get transitioned, or at least band B and C should get transitioned. Now, it's just like when you go to church and you pray that God blesses you financially. There's a physical, you can be rich physically, spiritually, but you need something to pull it down physically. What business are you doing? Now, there are policies, there are concepts, there is the electricity law and the controversy whether the federal government can stop or not stop states taking over regulatory functions, and there is actual doing it. There's having a round pegs in the round holes. There's having implementation, which is where we usually fail, right? We have brilliant laws, we have brilliant policies. Implementation is always a problem, you know, whether we implement the way we ought to, whether the regulator does not only issue brilliant regulations, guidelines, orders, but enforces same, whether the regulator promotes rather than inhibits business. Because I also think over-regulation inhibits business rather than promote business. And people go do what they want to do and then begin to guide, not make the bar so high. You want to do a project and the regulator says you can't do it. So for me, we need to create that bridge between brilliant policies that seek to take us to a destination and implementation of those policies, which is where we fail. So you typically first get, like, you want to plant a seed to become a fruit. It typically first gets bad. Now, for me, the badness should be accessibility, maybe expensive in the short term. More people come invest, more people become more creative, technology is involved, and people begin to use scale, begin to find options that drive down the price. You know, from PNG pipeline gas, people now do virtual gas pipelines where you use trucks, people do CNG, you know. So people become more creative and prices go down. China has pushed down the price of solar systems and all of that, unlike what it was several years ago. But if we do not create that bridge between policy and implementation and make our attractiveness, here the gist around Angola, Total Energy is going to Angola because we always have open debates. Our debates remain open. The way the power sector debates have been open. If we do not close and ensure, investors would rather you have bad laws then they get brilliant lawyers, brilliant economists that can structure their deals towards achieving a goal. Than having a policy, you say A today, then you say B tomorrow, no one's going to come invest. Because one of the, it's a tripod. One of those legs is consistency of policies and laws. If you don't have consistency of policies and laws, I'm not going, I won't invest, because I put down my $10 million and tomorrow I can't even monetize my $10 million. It's sunk capital, risk capital gone.
So there's a wide gulf between policy and implementation.
That's what we've had historically.
You know, whenever we talk about the power sector, it seems as if the more that you try to understand it, the more complex it becomes. Because you talk about access, the demand, depending on supply. You know, but supply does not seem to be the challenge. You have 200 million people who need power. But let's take a look at the efforts of the administration from the perspective of, you know, subsidies. For the petroleum sector, for instance, you know, there are talks about the subsidies being the problem over the years, and you know, the subsidy has been debatably taken out now, but we're still where we are. There are talks about subsidies in the power sector also being part of the challenge, that many do not know that there are actually very many needless subsidies in the power sector. I'm coming to you now, Engineer Oswago, that many needless subsidies in the power sector. But it seems as if it's there's a pushback on the attempt by the power ministry, you know, to eliminate these subsidies such that we can begin to move towards sustainable power supply. What are your thoughts on this pushback? If this is taken out of the way, will we be closer to the administration's desire of at least achieving 15,000 megawatts?
Now, the problem is that we have a commodity that everybody is looking for, but unfortunately it's not available. And now, subsidy or no subsidy, Nigerians are looking for power. And we talked about the developmental index of Nigeria because we can't go anywhere because there's no power. Now, why it looks as if it's so hydra-headed is because of involvement of government. Sometimes you begin to wonder, why is it that this power sector has become a big problem that it seems as if we are still moving within a circle? It's government involvement. It's inconsistency, just as Dr. Odin has rightly pointed out. We cannot move, we can't make anything work in power sector with 100% involvement of government. I have said it before, that the only way we can move forward in this power sector is for government to agree to say, yes, this is an area we can no longer play in. Open it up completely and allow people to invest. You know, investors are not coming in. Why are they not coming in? Inconsistency in policy of government. So subsidy is not really the issue now, because those who are even generating power currently on their own, they are paying so much for power. If power is available, Nigerians are really ready to pay. But it's not still available. Over 20 years, we'll still be hovering around 3.5, 4,000 megawatts, and that is not taking us anywhere. So subsidy is another aspect of it that is not the major problem now. Get off this system and allow private sector to drive this power sector, and we'll have enough power. The price may go up at the beginning, but with time, with reinvestment into the sector, price will actually go down because of, you know, competition. So we need to, you know, government need to take it, you know, and get off this power sector completely.
But we have private sector
really
participation to a significant extent now. So isn't it enough to measure the performance of not just this administration now, but even you know, the last administration? Yes,
there are lots of dislocation along the line. Power sector, private sector investment. Look at the discos, for example. Government sold the disco and retained 40% equity in it. So one would be wondering, why? What are you doing with the 40% equity? And the rhetoric is coming from government all the time, you know, sends wrong signal to the discos who actually would have gone ahead to get more funds to recapitalize and improve the infrastructure. But they are not doing that because rhetoric from government every now and then is that they may take it off. Now, out of the 11 discos, how many of them are really solvent? About only 2. So the remaining 9 are in comatose stage and it's back to government. Some of them are under receivership. Because these rhetorics keep coming that, oh, government may take it, government may take it. And that has really hemorrhaged the sector. And that's why we are where we are. And we are not making any movement. It's a big problem. Government involvement must stop.
Dr. Lee, let's come back to you on this because I've been processing how we can hack this thing. We can't generate as much as we have installed. We can't transmit the little we generate. The discos are in comatose. It sounds like we're in dire straits. Policy inconsistency has been highlighted by both of you and maybe players in this sector. Perhaps let's point out what are these policy inconsistency, or is it that there's such a jinx that doesn't want this to work? Because I was in my research yesterday and I looked at all the installation from hydro and thermal and I'm like, what is going on? We have what we need, but we can't seem to solve our problem. Dr. Oni.
Okay, interesting point. I wouldn't want to go into names, but it's obvious when the dailies report A and then say, oh, it was B. That alone, policy statements in themselves give investors signals. If you say, and what is supposedly government rumor, like saying, oh, we may upturn the privatization. Ask yourself, weren't foreigners falling over themselves to invest in the power sector in Nigeria? I mean foreign-owned businesses are in the power sector that you know, particularly key licenses, generation, distribution. During the privatization, no foreigner bought. It was Nigerians. Financing, only a South African bank, and I won't mention, wanted to invest. Last minute, they pulled out. I worked on 10 of those transactions during privatization. It was obvious that there was something fundamentally wrong. And that's one of those things, policy inconsistencies, or whether it's policy statements or whatever it is that you do put out. That's one thing. Another thing, I've always said it, that our problem in Nigeria is in generation. Our problem, and we cannot even take the power sector out of the economic context.
Right.
If there are many poor people and tariffs go up, even if it means there's going to be more power, you're going to have what you've had with the Band-Aid thing, a lot of hue and cry. A lot of people are going to complain. So working on improving the economy and government being an enabler is a primary thing this government needs to focus on. Just being an enabler and let people run the business. And do not over-regulate. I'm beginning to feel that the regulator is now beginning to over-regulate. Let people run what they want to do. Have limited regulation. Encourage and enable economic prosperity. You know, if you do all of that, even when tariffs go up, people are better able to absorb. Go back to when we were more prosperous. Early stage of the Jonathan government, we're quite prosperous. No one cared about many things. If things went up, and I think those are the times, and to be fair to this government, some of these policies are good policies. The only thing is we need to contextualize some of them. And can you do all of those in one swoop? The currency issue, removing subsidy, people are going to die. Because you already have an economy in dire strait. You have an economy on life support, and then you implement some of these brilliant policies. They are by all means brilliant. It's just that in our own context. So you cannot take the power sector out of the economic context, because generation is not an issue. The problem is, if I do generate, how do I transmit? If I do not even want to do transmission, want to do embedded, want to do IPP for an estate, can they afford it? I'm screaming. And I guess I'm not poor by any standard, but I'm screaming 300 naira plus per kilowatt hour. It's crazy. That's 500K a month, particularly when my kids' friends, cousins come around. So if I'm screaming, I can imagine that's someone's salary, right? If you earn reasonably well, 500K a month is about what I do for power. So you're going to scream because if you look at the entire economic, if we situate it economically, it's difficult, even when you speak about access, because it's going to be expensive, like you said initially. So it's many things. We need to find a solution to our grid. And I was at a dealership yesterday. I wanted to update the MBUX system of my vehicle, and they couldn't do it. They said our internet in Nigeria, they had to connect to Germany. They said internet in Nigeria is very poor, that we can't even update your car software. You know, so I think government needs to do a lot on our infrastructure backbone, transmission being one of them, because private sector is only supposed to key into infrastructure backbone, not build infrastructure backbone. I did a research a while ago, and I discovered that if the private sector was going to take over transmission and give us what we needed, it would take them 100 years to recover their investment.
What?
Transmission. You want to expand, do transmission the entirety of Nigeria. He's a researcher. Maybe he wants to confirm or he has a different view. 100 years for them to make back their money. So it's government's duty to build infrastructure backbone. Private sector is only supposed to connect, whether it's telecoms, whether it's power. So if we have strong transmission, and that's what people say, why generation isn't working. Look at the 11 utility solar projects. There are places where they can connect on the transmission network, and there are those imbalances. We don't have a strong EMS, emergency management system. All of these things, government just has to find a way to do it.
Keeps collapsing.
Yeah, that's why it keeps collapsing.
You already put a poser to him, but in addition to that, all of this conversation just reminded me of the Siemens deal, over $2 billion deal, and it's been on and maybe off and on. We understand that some of the equipment have arrived in Nigeria. Some say the timeline has now been shifted to 2030, 25,000 megawatts. We could do with that. In fact, that even it overshadows the promise of the president. So this just made me remember that again. Whether or not that is coming to fruition is another thing. But I'd like us to walk through some of the other promises. Again, you can speak to them. Another promise that was made in that manifesto was to eliminate estimated billing. And this is what the manifesto read. We will ensure that all electricity bills are meter-based by streamlining and accelerating existing schemes, such as the National Mass Metering Program and the Meter Asset Provider Scheme. There's still 5 more promises to go. But you can pick and choose whichever you want to speak to. Either the Siemens deal, how far it has gone. I know that the National Assembly approved, what, $500 million World Bank loan to purchase meters. Again, that's activity. We've not seen the fruition. But it's up to you now, Engineer Siago. It's a big one.
The second question, those meter deals.
The key one I want to start with is the grid. You know, since about 7 years now, we've had more than 140 national grid collapse incidents. Which country is going to survive with that? Now, if you go back to 2013, during the unbundling of the PSCN as it were then, Gencos sold, Discos sold partly, then the grid, the Transmission Company of Nigeria, government left it. And we criticized that move at that time, that our grid is spanning over 1,500 kilometers, too massive. And we talked about the idea of a microgrid system, that there is no need running a grid as big as that in a country like Nigeria, that we can decentralize the grid, which also was part of what Mr. President promised in his manifesto. Yes, I know the Siemens project to improve the grid is ongoing, but it can still take us out of the woods. We can actually do some quick wins by cutting the grid, decentralize it. Lagos can have its own grid, microgrid, Ibadan, and some other major cities can have their own grid. And it will be flexible in a way that we can actually infuse some other means of generation into this microgrid. But the way it is really, really difficult for you to run a monogrid system for a country like Nigeria. That's why we are still hovering around the same problem. Now, for meter access, that's another challenge. Currently, we have about 8 million thereabout subscribers in Nigeria. And the meter penetration as it is today is still about 43%, which means we have close to 4 to 5 million subscribers that are not metered. With the increase in the tariff of electricity, and you have a subscriber who is being charged on estimated billing, it's killing. It's killing. And I said this some time ago, that the responsibility of billing has to be that of the discos. But if you take that off the discos and allow maybe other players to do that. You are creating a lot of dislocation. I supply you energy. I should meter what I supply you. It's as basic as that. So we have not handled the metering aspect properly, and that's why we are having issues with metering. Allow those who are supplying the energy to meter what they are, giving out to their subscribers, and that's the only way we can do it, and the penetration will improve. NRC just a few weeks ago, changed the way it used to be, that, okay, anybody can go in, buy a meter, and, you install. But the discos should have that responsibility.
Because this is almost like another subsidy of sorts. If now the government is going to be purchasing the meters for the discos, essentially helping them to some part of their business.
They don't have business doing that.
Well, I imagine that, under the new power law, the states should have some form of role to play in that. And I know that Akwa Ibom State, had project, of a meter manufacturing plant. So I wonder, and Dr. Oni, I want you to speak to it vis-a-vis the next promise that we're going to be looking at. The role that states have to play and the gap that is evident here, in encouraging local production of meters. Speaking of which, the next promise that identified in the Renewed Hope agenda is rural electrification. And I'm just going to read out a few lines. We will streamline and relax regulations to enable private sector, local and state government actors to electrify rural Nigeria in a safe and secure manner with reasonable tariffs. Can we look independently at the federal government's strides or lack of it in this area without looking at the absence of the subnationals playing a role here as well?
Okay, interesting one. Because I'm a lawyer, I'll start with the law. The Electricity Act, an interesting piece of legislation, gives states the right, it's not a privilege, it's a right, to demand to take over the regulatory functions. I think it's section 232 or so, subsection 2 of that law. And the federal government or NERC has no choice in the matter once the state follows that process. Now, for rural, I've always been of the school of thought that constitutional, even before the amendment to the constitution that was signed by President Buhari, states had the power to legislate around distribution, and no state did it. I always feel that states, when it comes to retail markets, from distribution to supply, it should be states handling. Generation, transmission, you can have a regional system like is suggested by the federal government. I'm not sure states that are struggling with roads, traffic lights, are going to succeed with having both a wholesale and a retail market. That's my personal view. I can say something else if you ask me. If you want to achieve something else, I'll tell you how to go about that. Now, that said, I think that rural electrification, we've always had the REA, Rural Electrification Agency, which is performed averagely well over time, starting with Mrs. Ogumbiyi, I don't remember her first name, Damilola Ogumbiyi, done reasonably well until recently there were rumors around or speak around corruption and stealing of funds and all of that. It was alleged, right?
She had moved to sustainable energy.
Yeah, she had moved to SE for all. Yeah, she had moved to SE for all. And they've done quite a bit around, especially using renewable energy sources. Now, I think states and local governments, and that's the problem, our local governments are dead. There's so many things that should be residual matters for local governments. I think things like rural electrification, working with states, it should be local governments doing certain things, areas that are not that economically viable to, say, invest in grid enhancement for that area. You can then have off-grid, you can have the local government providing support, education, even research and development for cheaper means of generating that power. So I think what the Electricity Act is done quite reasonable. The query I have, and which I think the minister meant, was that not many states actually know what it entails to create electricity markets. They just think it's building generation plants and giving ISPO. I'm not sure that that's what electricity markets are. You have system operators, you would have scheduling, you will have, are you going to use an economic merit dispatch system? You'd have to think through it. If you can't think about solving traffic problems and all of those, I wonder how you would have both a retail and a wholesale market. So states have a role, but I think it should be around the retail market, from distribution to supply and metering and all of that. Those should be enforced.
Pardon me, beyond that regulation, but Abia State has also proven a testament to what a public-private partnership can look like in the area of electricity generation with the Abia Geometric project. So there's an evident gap, in other states in this area.
Let me come to you, Dr. Sago, on this one, just so that we dovetail into and try to wrap this up as much as possible. There's the other part of the promise which has to do with the renewable energy. They call it Renewable Energy Plan, and we try to hold them accountable for what they promised, which is why we're looking at the document.
Yeah, absolutely.
Our renewable energy plan shall be based on Nigeria's commitment to carbon neutrality by 2060. Of interest to me is our solar energy plan will focus on all major parts of the power value chain to ensure that we take advantage of all that solar power has to offer in terms of generating, transmitting, and distributing power across the country. What are you seeing? How much prospect do we have in that area? And is this more, viable in terms of in the short term than the big grids and all of that for us?
Absolutely on point. In view of where we are, renewable is the only way we need to go now, to help us take us off the current trajectory. We are located in the Sun Belt, and we have a lot of solar energy in this country. Government need to take full responsibility of this and drive it. If you check properly, you discover that most homes are now going into solar energy, because the municipal power is not available. Although the initial cost, the cost outlay for you to actually put this into play is huge, and not everybody can, put the funds together. For you to put together maybe a 5 kVA generation system using solar in your environment, you may spend close to 4 million naira, and that is not easy. So government can really play a role by making sure that some little subsidy comes into things like the solar panels. They last quite long. The solar panel can stay more than 25 years. The batteries, which is also the most expensive aspect of it, government can play a role in making them cheaper so that this off-grid initiative can actually help to solve the major power problem we're having in this country. So it's the best way to go, and we can actually make it off-grid, and everybody will have access to it if government can, put in some little cap subsidy for the batteries, the panels, and some other things that are needed. So it's the right way to go.
Dr. Maybe you respond to that as well as some of the issues that Bukola was raising.
Okay, I think that there's a lot of movement around renewables, but it's not sufficient to move. It's the pace at which you move and the strategy to that movement is also important. I do not know who the personnel are pushing that area, because that's also critical. You need people who are thinking through the process. But I see that individuals, like you said, now mount solar panels and batteries. But for me, I do not think in the long run that's sustainable. I think that you still need a strong grid system, whether you regionalize that grid or you make it a single grid. Because one, the capital outlay, two, it gets to a point where you need to change those batteries. They don't even last more than 3 or 4 years, the experience I have. So for me, at scale, that won't solve the problem. But like you said, in the short term, it will play a role in moving us away from where we currently are. But that's not the only solution. Government needs to do much more in this area too. I haven't seen enough in my own view. Maybe the debate is we have so much gas and we haven't achieved much. Why leave and not focus on that and then start chasing something else? Which is maybe a valid point, right? Because without solving the gas conundrum, we're not going to have power.
Well, in terms of rating as well, we can take a look at this promise that was made on power sector governance reform. And the promise was we will work with the National Assembly to review the Electric Power Sector Reform Act 2005 and reform the regulatory and governance structure of our nation's power sector. Fair enough. We have the Electricity Act signed into law earlier in the year. So for that one at least, there's a pass mark. But when we drill deeper, is again another thing. It's one thing to just put up a document and say, oh yes, we've achieved this, but what does that document mean for the sector in itself? And that's where you've talked about the policies and the implementation and all of that. But I want to take us back, because this conversation is something we've had for decades now, literally, and we'll most likely have this conversation next week, or when this administration is at 2 years. Hopefully not. I'm not hoping for that, but it is what it is. What is fundamentally wrong? And again, this question might sound cliche. Is it that we have borrowed a technology, which is power, generation, distribution, and the rest? We didn't invent that technology ourselves. It's something that was sort of borrowed. But is it that we borrowed the technology, we didn't borrow the know-how? You know, it's one thing to borrow a technology, just keep borrowing the phone, but you need to know how the phone works. Is that the challenge we've been having? Or is there always a string from who we borrowed it from that they always control it and say, this is our intellectual property anyway, so we always need to have control over it? What is fundamentally wrong? Do we need to sit back and say, let us develop something that is ours, that we can own? Yes, borrow the idea, but also, you know, develop in such a way that we can always own it, and whatever happens out there doesn't affect us. What is fundamentally wrong?
Okay, my view is that over time, we've left undone what we should do. And I'll give you an instance. For example, between 1987 and about 2012-ish, 2014, there was no major enhancement of the national grid. Imagine what the population was in 1987. Imagine what the population is now and was in 2016. If you do not consistently invest, consistently enable investment, this is where you find yourself.
But our power was bad then.
Yes, it was
bad,
terrible, but it's worse. It seemed to be getting worse.
Now.
If you look at dailies in 87, you'd see those things that, oh, no power and all of that. Maybe if you go further forward, it was slightly better. Because you know what makes me particularly sad? Because I'm a researcher, I think we started our first power plant 12 years after the UK started its own power. So imagine, but we're probably 200 years behind them now. So one reason, and to be honest and to be fair to this government, is that we've consistently not seen the right things being done. We had a Batnaji who was a fantastic minister of power, and you let him go for whatever flippant reason. I wouldn't let that kind of person go. If it's business and if it's results I want, I wouldn't let a Batnaji leave. I wouldn't care what anybody else thought or said about him, about conflict. I wouldn't, because you do not just want someone who is brilliant. You want someone who, if an engineer says speaks the niceties and says the whatever technical jargon, he knows that the guy is saying nonsense and he's saying a lie, and tells him no, but this is what it should be and this is what it should be. If you don't do it within the next 24 hours, you lose your job, and it goes away. The guy's going to run and do it. But if that person doesn't really understand the nitty-gritties, you can tell him anything, and he needs a briefing to be able to speak. So for me, we've consistently done what's wrong. And I hope this government will stop it. If we consistently do what is wrong and you expect good results, then there must be something wrong with your...
Are you saying, maybe you answer that, are you saying here now that in the cabinet we have now, some are just square pegs in round holes?
That's correct. That's correct.
And is that how it's been subsequently, even before now, over the years?
Yes. After the exit of Batnaji.
We haven't had professionals who understood.
I'll give you an example now. The power sector will be having issues. Now, look at the people who recruit as ministers for the power sector. We had a lawyer the other time. Now we have an accountant. You know, and we are saying, why can't you make an engineer the Attorney General and Minister for Justice? Or
I see what you're doing there.
Make an engineer Minister of Health. These are the issues.
But don't you just need an administrator?
No.
A good administrator.
This is an area that is holding the fabric of the country.
But we have a lawyer who is Minister of Aviation.
We know. We know, because aviation too will have lots of legal issues surrounding it. But for one, a critical sector that has pulled us down this long, we need to put round peg in round holes. And you begin to see the manifestation of things. He just talked about Batnaji. He left government, but look at what he has done in Aba. So this is exactly what we are talking about.
So let's do this now before we wrap up. On a scale of 1 to 100, which is what we'll be doing for each sector, what would be your assessment of this administration in the area of power? Dr. Oni, I'm
maybe do it again, because that's what we started from.
I'd say A and B. A for activity, maybe 60%. For the results, we see maybe 30%. That's the truth. That's the way I see it as Ayodele, not as a professional.
Average of 45%,
yeah,
60%.
Yeah. For me, I'm happy with the rework of the legislative reform, which was signed, I think, June 9, 2023. For example, now, the Enugu state has been given full go-ahead, to regulate electricity in that state. So I believe other states should take a cue from that. On regulation, and yes, I will score the government high, but on power availability, honestly, is a no-no. We have nothing to show for it.
Okay.
You don't want to give us a number? 10%, 15%?
No. We've not done well.
You don't want to be an examiner today?
No.
Under 30?
Below 30, really.
There you go. I recall the Electricity Act was signed in February, if I'm correct, this year.
May.
No, it was, I think it was June 9th.
June.
Okay, so which one was signed this year by the
no, it was an amendment.
It was an amendment.
Yes. It was an amendment to that act.
So which gives state governments the capability,
which is what we're seeing, which enables the bureaus.
We don't repeat. It's not 36 mistakes. It's not 36 federal mistakes. I hope so. I hope.
We had that conversation.
I hope so.
But gentlemen, that's where the bureau comes in.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I hope so.
Gentlemen, we'd like to thank you so much. As I said, perhaps we'll be having this conversation in the coming days, but I do hope that the conversation we'll be having is, generation, in fact, eventual distribution has improved greatly. And Nigerians are saying amen to that. There you go.
This time next year, right?
Dr. Dele Oni, he is a commercial lawyer, partner, Energy Practice Group, Bloomfield LP, author of Renewables, Electric Power Transactions, and Electricity Act 2023. We'd like to thank you so much, as well as engineer, author, Osiago, who's a member, Nigerian Society of Engineers, Managing Director and CEO, CCS Technology Limited. Thank you as well.
Thank you for having me.
Well, there you have it. This is by no means the end of that conversation, but we'll take a break on it and on the show right now. And when we return, we'll turn our attention to yet another major pillar of governance in the country. Stay with us. It's a move.
Present day, but sad reality is that the judiciary has stagnated on the same salary scale for over 16 years. The instant NJC proposal for 300% increase was informed by the prevailing economic realities of increasing headlines and core inflationary trends, putting in place an enabling working environment that engenders professional development and efficiency for judicial officers.
I cannot but follow him in commending this bill and requesting its swift passage to the benefit of the judiciary in particular and Nigerians in general.
First is the recognition that the administration of salaries and conditions of service of judicial officers should not be lumped together with that of other public or political office holders. We should therefore not leave the judiciary at the mercy of the unpredictability of a future executive and legislative arms of government.
Even the daily running of the courts is an issue. We are almost closing down some of our courts for want of resources to manage. We do not only want to leave the emergency ward, we also want to leave the ward completely.
It was an engaging session yesterday, as you've seen, at the National Assembly. And highlight of that was the fact that we need to take care of the welfare of our judicial officers, from judges to judicial officers across the value chain. And that is why you saw the Minister of Finance, Wale Odu, Lateef Fagbemi, the Minister of Justice and Attorney General of the Federation, as well as the President of the Court of Appeal. And all of this advocacy is to make sure that for a critical, pillar of democracy like the judiciary, we ensure that issues of payments are not an issue, if you allow me to say it that way. That's why we've been joining the program to explore further the conversation that started yesterday by the chairman-elect of the Nigerian Bar Association, Ibadan branch, Mr. Ibrahim Lawal. He joins us via Zoom. Mr. Lawal, thank you for coming on the program.
It's my pleasure. Good morning.
This looks like a lot of good news for judicial officers. Is that it for you from where you sit?
Well, it's a mixed feeling for me because it is unfortunate that at this time is when we are talking about the pay rise for judicial officers. It appears to me that we have not been fair to them, you know, and we're always quick to bash them when they dish out judgments, but they have been so neglected up to today. But like I said, it's a mixed feeling. At least I'm happy now that somebody is looking at it and they are trying to change or correct those anomalies. But it is something that we shouldn't be discussing. It's something that we should have a structure that would do that at every point in time. Judiciary is so important to the life of any nation that we cannot toy with it the way we are doing in this part of the world. Not only the judges, even the magistrates. If you look at the level of abject poverty of our magistrates across the country, you will marvel. And these are people who on a daily basis, try as much as possible, to dispense justice, particularly matters that relate to crime. But what do they get in return? You have a situation where you have magistrates.
All right, we hope we can reconnect with Mr. Lawal, who is the chairman-elect of the NBA Ibadan branch. Okay, he's back. Mr. Lawal, you can go ahead. If you can unmute and go ahead, Mr. Lawal.
Yes.
Just to land on your thoughts.
Yes. So you imagine the state of finance, even the state of health of the judiciary. Not only their remuneration, go to courts in Nigeria, you will marvel at the kind of structures you have across the country. It is so appalling. When you get to courts, you'll be greeted with all sorts of vegetations that are not required in court atmosphere. So there are some places where there are no courtrooms, and they will have to invent one or two things for that one to become a courtroom. So there are a lot of things that need to be done about judiciary in terms of personnel, in terms of the structure itself, and the quality of supporting staffs in our court system. It's appalling when you get to court and you see the quality, because of the pay. Quality people are not attracted as judicial assistants or supporting staffs in our courts. So
Oh dear.
It appears as if...
It appears the network wouldn't allow Dr. Lawal land on his thought. But we're talking about judiciary and their welfare. One of the things that was raised by Professor Odin Kalu yesterday on our sister program, Politics Today, was the fact that this should not be just about judges and justices of the Supreme Court and the Court of Appeal. It should be about the entire spectrum of the judiciary. Mr. Lawal, are you there? Oh dear. So can you hear me, Mr. Lawal?
Yes, I can hear you, and that supports my assertion here that it has not. It should not be limited to the justices of Supreme Court, Court of Appeal, or even High Court judges. I'm even saying that it should permeate down the ladder, that the whole judicial structure should be taken care of. Even magistrates, caddies, and whoever that has one or two things to do with our justice system must be taken care of. Judiciary has been neglected for a long time, and that's the truth. Part of it was even the remuneration of judges. A lot of other things, like the president of Court of Appeal said, even running the courts is a problem to a lot of judicial divisions, especially in Oyo State. There are even lack of adequate number of judges. In the last 2 years, judges had been selected for them to be appointed. The government has refused to provide vehicles for judges to aid the appointment. In Oyo State, we are supposed to have 40 judges. We have less than 15 judges as I'm talking to you. And so imagine the kind of work those less than 15 judges will do, and what the ordinary people on the street will suffer because of lack of adequate personnel to man our courts. Ditto other places, ditto other states. Not to talk of magistrates. We don't have enough magistrates. They don't even have enough courtrooms. The courtrooms that are there are not properly, maintained. You get to some magistrate court, you will marvel. So it is a whole lot of issues that judiciary has to be looked into holistically. It is not only on the issue of remuneration, which is key anyway, but we have to look at it holistically in terms of structure, in terms of finance of the courts, and in terms of quality of personnel that will assist the court in ensuring prompt delivery of justice. So that's the thing. So judiciary will have to be looked into. In fact, if it means declaring a state of emergency on the judiciary, I think we should do it. We are just deceiving ourselves. All those things we are doing, there are a lot of issues with judiciary that we need to look into to ensure that they dispense justice without fear or favor.
It's a good thing that you are drawing attention to to the entire spectrum of the judiciary now, not just judges, which we're quick to more often than not concentrate on, but we also forget that there are, as you have said, magistrates, there are court bailiffs, there are court probation officers, there are court administrators. As a matter of fact, there are other levels of administrators. There are security personnel also that work in those courts, and they are all judiciary workers. But really, how holistic is this call by the Attorney General of the Federation for a review of the remuneration of judicial workers? Because it reminds me of a piece written by Senior Advocate of Nigeria just last year, drawing attention to the poor state of welfare of magistrates in Lagos. So who should be championing the cause of judiciary workers, not just at the federal level now, but at the state level?
Well, it is the responsibility of the bar, to speak for the judiciary. Judiciary has no voice of their own. It is the responsibility of the bar. The national body of our association must do more than they are doing now to ensure that those matters are put in the front burner. For us at the state level, and for me as the newly elected chairman of Ibadan Bar, I have taken it as a responsibility to speak for the bar.
Right.
We are going to speak loudly and draw attention of government to issues bordering on the state of our judiciary. We are going to, so it is our responsibility as lawyers, body of lawyers. Jusun have always been saying their own, but we must complement their effort. Right. It is the responsibility of NBA, to speak for the judiciary. it is also our responsibility to speak against the judiciary if they are acting not in tandem with their oaths. So, in tandem with their judicial oaths,
and speaking
it
of
is our responsibility to speak for them.
Right. Speaking of Judicial, I know they've had to go on strikes and demonstrate, particularly for what they called the autonomy of the judiciary, as well as, you know, the welfare and the rest of judiciary workers. But I'd like us to break it down further. So there's a call for autonomy. There's now the call yet again for improved welfare, salaries, remuneration, and the rest. Don't forget that Labour is also doing its own, you know, trying to get better minimum wage for workers. They've since rejected the 48,000 naira proposal by the government. And this is the same government that you are relying upon to increase the wages of judiciary workers. So at this point, which is more important, the autonomy, having proper autonomy as it ought to be, or improved welfare? And in the context of governments that are still dragging their feet when it comes to improved minimum wage, how far do you think you can move the needle? On the flip side, which is another question I'd like to ask, but I'll keep that till you answer this one, Mr. Lawal.
You see, the ultimate goal is for the judiciary to have their own autonomy. If there is an autonomy, it also means that there is financial autonomy, and they can decide, you know, objectively as to the appropriate remuneration, you know, for judiciary workers, and as well as all strata of the judiciary. The reason why we are talking about pay rise, you know, for judicial officers is that because they are not in control of their finances, they still need to go cap in hand. Like I just told you now, what had stalled appointment of judges in Oyo State is the refusal of the governor to provide vehicle that the would-be judges will use when they are appointed. So and in the last 2 years, we have not been able to appoint judges, even when they have been shortlisted. They are ready, but because the vehicle that will show that the state is ready for new judges had not been provided by the governor.
So, Mr. Lawal, fantastic point you make there. But here comes the flip side of my... pardon me. Here comes the flip side of my question, and I'd like us to just consider both of them. In 2020, I think ICPC had rated the judiciary in its index as one of the most corrupt. So is this why we see that sort of corruption in the judiciary? Because the wages, you know, the remuneration and the welfare of judiciary workers are not what it ought to be. Is that responsible for that corruption reported in the sector?
Of course, if you want to say somebody should not be corrupt, that person must be adequately taken care of. While I will not subscribe to any judicial officer being corrupt, the state must also perform its own responsibility in ensuring that those judicial officers are put in a good stead. They are comfortable and do not need to be swayed by any other thing, particularly the supporting staffs. Their remuneration is nothing to write home about, and they will want to augment it. So that's the problem, you know, with the judiciary. We need to first and foremost do that which is necessary for them not to, you know, get involved in any form of corruption. If you have not, I mean, you can imagine in the last 15 years, their pay had been stagnated. Yet you want the best for them. Even if you are not corrupt, how do you want them to give the best, you know, to the kind of job you have given them? It's not going to work like that. So we need to be sincere with ourselves. We need to take a holistic view of the judiciary, not only in the federal, in all the states, and ensure that what is due to them is given to them. Then we can now talk about fair judgment. We can talk about fair justice.
All right, Mr. Lawal, absolutely, your point top-notch, and we hope that this is not just going to be a talk shop. It's going to be implemented at the end of the day. We must thank you, Ibrahim Lawal, the chairman-elect, Nigerian Bar Association, Ibadan branch. Thank you, sir, for coming on the program.
You are welcome. It's my pleasure.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Well, We'll take a quick break now, and when we come back, we'll switch gears, and of course, we'll get to Nollywood, the big winners of the night at the AMVCA. One of them is right here with us. Who? You'll find out after this break. Join us again.
Welcome back. So if your creative efforts, got 8 nominations, is it 8 now? 11 nominations and 6 big wins, you'll so probably be flexing your muscle and be in the clubs and celebrating. Well, we're joining that team to celebrate, just to preserve, their moment of fame for a little longer as we celebrate one of the winners of the AMA African Magic Viewer Choice Awards. I always mixed up the abbreviation. Let's welcome Ademola Adedoyin. Good morning and welcome to the Morning Brief.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, guys.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
Kadi asked you if you often get that question.
I saw that coming.
You look like the Jesus of Nollywood. But for me, you bear a sort of resemblance to Nigerian British actor Chiwetel Ejiofor. You remind me of him in 12 Years a Slave. Do you get that as
comparison. Well, I've got that once or twice, but not as much as
the Jesus of Nollywood. Okay, so congratulations. What does it feel like being the winner of the Best Supporting Actor now from The Breath of Life?
It feels encouraging. It's exciting. I feel like the job's not finished. I feel like we have a long way to go. We have a lot of work to do. So that's what I want to put my mind towards. And I'm trying to enjoy it. But I also need to get back to work.
And you're also from an illustrious family, right?
Well, yes,
the industrialist Adedoyin. Do you feel privileged? And what's the remarkable difference between being from that lineage, with what you're doing, a departure from business?
I do feel privileged. It is a privilege. It's, it's like a lottery win to wake up and you're in a situation that allows you to have a good education, that gives you options in life, even though you don't know you have those options at the time. But yeah, I do feel privileged.
So let's walk you back into Nollywood as much as possible, which is the space you operate in. Someone said, was it Davido that said Nigerians like, because when they were like, why are they always coming for you? He said, look, let's be sincere. Nigerians like maybe the grass to grace story.
It's true.
So do you get that pushback sometimes like, this guy, your family is made now. Yeah. Why are you coming through?
Why are you taking our job?
Can you just shift?
I've got it on all levels. Wow. I mean, people even think maybe coming from a good family can help you in Nollywood. Not necessarily. I had difficulties. There were people that literally told me, look, you don't need to do this. At auditions, you don't need to do this. Just go and work for your dad, stuff like that, just to try to dissuade you. But it's just the nature of the beast. It's just how it is. You just have to find your way around it and keep doing your work. The work is the most important out of all these things, all the feelings, because it comes from people's feelings. They feel like, leave it alone. They love the the grass to grace story better, and you just have to navigate your way around it. I tend to really just ignore it and just focus on the work.
So I'm tempted to ask, so if you didn't grow up in the hood, if you didn't grow up on the streets, you grew up from a privileged background, you're given a script. Because sometimes your experience helps interpret the story.
Yes.
How do you adapt?
Well, I personally am a person who has a lot of different life experience. My dad isn't the kind of guy that just doles out money. He's the kind of guy that used to send us to go and work with a mechanic.
Brilliant.
Yes, and my brother got to do that. He sent me to work in a farm. He made me work under him, but at the lowest level. I worked in his companies, but at the very lowest level. I actually had to climb up to the level of, you know, marketing assistants, you know, how to work through sales and logistics and, you know, everything. So he makes things very difficult for you. And I had a period in my life where I lost all contact with my family and I lost all privilege with my family. So it got me in a situation where I got to see a lot of things I wouldn't normally see. I think it was destined to be. It was definitely destined.
You want to share that story? We're curious.
Well, I can't go into the exact details.
Yeah, the ones you can tell us.
What I can say is I generally got detached and had to live on my own for a while. Out in the, let me call it the wild, out in the wild. A little bit abroad and a lot back here when I was abruptly brought back to Nigeria. So I got I spent a lot of time away from my home, from my family home, and from Lagos. So I got to see Nigeria a lot more. I got to learn from a lot of different levels of society.
Fantastic, and I think that adds to the richness of your character, how you portray.
I think it helped.
You know, the characters. For what it's worth, though, I didn't. First time I saw you on television or in a movie, I didn't know about your background, so I got to enjoy and watch you for the actor you are. In fact, let me just shock you.
It's better like that.
Exactly. I only got to find out some weeks ago, actually, about it when we were talking about, you know, the award, and it didn't make much difference to me because I think people should be rated based on merit.
For me, all that stuff is really not what is important. What is important is what you build, not what you already have. What is important is character, not privilege. So the work is the most important.
Fantastic. So let's now talk about how you churn out the work. You know, how you have to put yourself in the zone. Because watching Breath of Life, it's Breath of Life, but it took our breath away. You know, we always say that because the way you interpreted the character, it was almost surreal. A lot of us wanted to come on screen and fight with you and cry with you. And that's the hallmark of an actor, bringing people into the movie, into the character, into the story, such that we forget that this is a script you're actually acting now. My wife keeps telling me this is a script, right?
This is not real.
So how did you put yourself in the zone such that you were able to churn out that kind of beauty?
First of all, research. And for me, a lot of my research at the time came from personal loss. I've experienced deep loss in life, so I know what it tastes like. So I just had to dial what I already had to 1,000. And of course, research for the character. I learned Olympic diving. I've always been a reader, so it was easy to acclimate to that part of it. Just get fit for the role because he's an athletic chap.
Did you really lose this?
I lost everything, of course. Yeah, I shaved. Cut my head down.
Did you feel naked?
I did feel naked. Yeah, I did feel naked. You know that thing they say about beardless men,
right?
About, massive. Is it like you're washing mango or whatever? That's what it felt
fired.
Like. No shots fired.
Shots fired.
You have a beard.
Not
I had
me.
nothing. I had nothing. Like it was
clean sheet.
That was a major sacrifice for you.
It was.
So are the ladies still looking at you during that period?
Well, yeah, in a different way. But they were still looking.
This is some form of enlightenment for me. I didn't know that men had that serious attachment to their beards.
Yeah. Well, ask Jeffrey.
It's just when you get used to it.
I love my beards.
It depends how long you've had
no hair, by the way. It's fine.
Had your beard for years.
It comes in every, what's the interval now?
As much as I can.
So speak to us about the personality you're building in Nollywood. I jokingly said earlier on, before we came on set, that you're like the Nollywood Jesus.
Oh my goodness.
The Jesus of Nollywood.
How often do you hear that?
I do hear, I hear that a lot. But simply for the character, not
God calling,
not
right?
in terms of my personality. I cannot claim to be I cannot claim to be that kind of person because, who is that good? You know what I mean? But based on the character, yes, I get a lot of that.
But who are you in real life?
Who am I in real life?
Are you like Peter, Judas?
I'm a person working on neutrality. I'm working on trying to be neutral, on not trying to put myself in a box. To be neutral so that you can go anywhere. Learn the rules so that you can skillfully bend them or break them. Like, before you do that, you have to learn the rules first now. So that's what I'm trying to do. I'm just trying to learn the rules of life and the rules of society and be as neutral as possible so that I can take the action in any direction I want. So that I'm not fixed.
In the area of spirituality or neutrality politically?
Neutrality, no, not politically. It's hard to be neutral politically in Nigeria. It's very difficult. So just neutral in terms of my mind, the way I see the world, not judging myself to be better, higher, or lower than anybody. That kind of thing. Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about the success of Breath of Life now. I know that it was bankrolled to a large extent by Prime Video, and not long after Prime Video divested from Nigeria. But I'm sure that perhaps they never saw this coming, you know. First of all, on the one hand, what do you think stood Breath of Life out? It was like a movie that nobody was looking that way. Everybody was looking the other way of, you know, some other movies. Yes. And then Breath of Life stole the show at the MVCA. So what was that special thing about Breath of Life? The last time we were talking, we're expressing surprise that yet again it was a faith-based movie. That's on the one hand. Then on the other hand, do you think that, you know, based on this success, perhaps Prime Video may just be reconsidering its decision?
Well, for the first part, I think it's just Bibi Shashori's world and we're all living in it. Because the guy is such a careful filmmaker. He is such a deep thinker and writer, and he just created this world that is real, but is also higher than this real world, because of everybody seems principled and everybody has their values in check and they're all telling their truth. And I think that's what sticks the movie out, the depth of it. It's, you know, a lot of what we usually like in Nigeria is very basic, just entertaining, comedy, you know, that kind of thing, romance. But this has all of those elements and a lot more. I think that's what made it.
Okay, we're going to come to a very personal question, but there's a scene I want you to help us walk through. That particular scene where they tied you and you watched your wife in the movie got out in that inferno. Yes. Your daughter and your wife. Yes. In a car in front of your house before you, and you were helpless. What was happening to you at that moment? Does anyone ever recover from that?
How do you recover from that? I don't think you really recover from loss. You just put it in your pocket.
That type of loss is gruesome.
It's gruesome, but all loss is gruesome. This may be bad compared to another person's, but the other person is feeling their own. So they can't tell that yours is worse when they're feeling their own. So loss is loss. And you don't really recover. You put it in your pocket and you keep moving.
We're going to get to this question.
That's the scene. That's just, but I wish they...
No, I go see the movie if you want to get. So there's something.
You haven't seen it?
I've seen it. Yes, I've seen it.
No, I'm talking about people out there who have not seen it, which I really doubt at this rate. Yeah. But there's something about your personality, which I'm again coming back to, because there's this thing about you watching someone on screen and then seeing the person in real life, and then you try to measure. Right. There's a look you have, aside the Jesus part. There's a look in your eyes. Maybe it talks about the experience. I see you're smiling. So someone is asking, one of our viewers is asking that most of your videos or movies they've seen, you seem to have very strong emotions, anger, you know, and it's easy for you to portray that. Are you an angry person in real life?
Maybe I was an angry youth. I was an angry youth. But I don't think I'm an angry person anymore. I'm really enjoying myself right now. So.
Because you have that look. If someone, you know, like, I'm going to get you, and you don't even have to say anything.
I have a bit of everything, because I feel very powerfully.
You do?
So I have a lot of everything.
So maybe we should cast you for Superman.
Hey, let's go.
You like that, right?
Let's go.
James Bond.
Let's go.
I love that. So you said that you're putting yourself in work now, and I love that perspective. Yeah. Don't stay in the previous glories. Absolutely bask in it, but keep focused. What's your work like this year?
The actors have a lot of downtime, so I have other work that I do.
Or are you taking a break, or just to rest from what just happened?
There's no break. Break for what?
break
for, I've spent many years on break, so there's too much to do, I think. There's too much to do.
Acting, modeling?
Acting. I haven't gotten much modeling work lately, but I do some real estate management.
Oh, beautiful.
And multimedia production. Yeah. That's what I've done for longest, since even before I finished school. And I still get clients from time to time, and I still have clients from many years ago that I still service with minor services, not major multimedia services.
So if you were to advise someone who is, because sometimes when we look at some people in Nollywood, they're calling names now, we have a difficulty understanding whether they have as much range as possible. And that could be limiting, not necessarily typecasting, that some people are typecasted, but the actor's ability to have as much range as possible, which is why Kaido was asking about being angry, being happy, and all of that. When you talk about range, how do you immerse yourself to make sure that whatever script you're given, whether you have to laugh through, get angry through, be a villain through, be a hero through, you get yourself involved and interpret that script to the best of your ability?
For me, it's about trying not to be acting, trying not to be pretending. For me, it's not about saying the words of the character. It's about saying the words of the character and thinking the thoughts of the character, both at the same time. So it's almost as if you're running two operating systems in your head at once. You're running your own, but you have to push your own below and put the characters above and run it all with the character as the priority.
So what's the typical day like, for a thespian? Do you project your lines, or you do your rehearsals on your wife, for instance, if you're at home? How do you rehearse to bring out
for me,
the emotion that we see?
I rely on repetition because of dyslexia. I rely on repetition. Repetition has become the most important thing. It's what can get me locked into something. Yeah. So it's hard to approach things on the surface level for me. It doesn't even work for me. I have to look at it again, look at it again, look at it again. And every time you look at it, you find more, and you sink deeper and deeper. That's it.
So you don't need the help of, someone to get into character?
No, I need research. After research, I'm done. Research is absolutely necessary, but after that...
Are you dyslexic?
Yes.
You mentioned dyslexia.
Yeah, I got tested in the UK while I was at school.
And yet you're able to churn out amazing characters.
Yeah. I mean, this is the thing about reading. You learn about so many perspectives. There are people that go on to have great careers that have it now. So their head is not bigger than mine now.
That's a good way to look at it. An interesting way.
Fantastic.
As long as you see it's possible.
Certainly out of time.
There you go. We can go on and on with this. We're tempted to go deeper into your personal life, but we'll leave this for the next award you win, which we're sure should not be too far away.
Yes, amen.
How's your wife doing, by the way?
I'm single.
You're single.
Yeah.
So that's the way I wanted to ask for you. Ask another way.
The interview don't finish.
Well, we're not going to let you go without getting you to do a line, maybe your favorite line from The Breath of Life.
Wow, do I even remember my lines now? Who needs guns when you've got God? I love that.
Fantastic.
Yeah, I think we should all reflect on that. So.
Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
Absolutely. We wish you the very best in going forward. Thank you so much, as always, because this is quite inspiring to hear your personal story as well as just glean from your knowledge. Thank you.
We've been speaking with Ademola Adedoyin, actor, model, business mogul now.
Real estate.
I wouldn't say mogul yet.
Allow us to give that to you. That's our own little award to you.
Absolutely.
I received it.
Thank you so much for your time.
All right, guys, just before we wrap up the show, we just have some things happening at the moment. We'll bring to your knowledge, to your attention, that retired police officers who came from different state chapters are lamenting the untold hardship being suffered by their members over the failure of PENCOM to pay them their entitlement. So you can see that the retired officers are asking the federal government to remove them from the contributory pension scheme. They're converging on the nation's capital to say just enough is enough. We need our pension paid. Bukola, Kayode.
Yeah, so that's happening right now. It's something we're keeping tabs with for you. So stay with us right here as we give you all of the updates. But that's not all that we have for you. At exactly 10 a.m. today, we understand that the Rivers State House of Assembly, under the leadership of
Victor Okojumbo?
Yes, Victor Okojumbo, is set to screen commissioner nominees, about 8 of them in the hallowed chambers of the River State House of Assembly in the River State Government House. So that you see the notice by 10 a.m. This is for the Okojumbo-led State Assembly in Rivers. Of course, we're following all of that for you as well.
Yeah, quite a lot happening. So keep it locked on Channels Television. We'll be bringing you updates on those events and so much more. And that sums it up on the program today. We'll be back again tomorrow. I am Bukola Koka.
Have a brilliant, beautiful day ahead. I'm Jeffrey Zong.
And don't forget, who needs guns when you have God? Sunrise Daily is next. I'm Kayode Okikelu. Goodbye.